The Daisy Chain podcast is proudly supported by Personal Farewells, proudly family-owned and operated independent funeral directors located in Sydney.
Hello, this is Emma from the Daisy Chain podcast, and today I am here with Rachel Smith, who I discovered through her beautiful Instagram profile, Minding My Mother. Welcome, Rachel. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Emma. Thanks.
How are you today?
I'm good, thanks. Although it's night.
Yeah, so it's still Friday there.
It is, yeah.
Whereabouts are you?
I'm on the East Coast in North Carolina of the US.
Beautiful. So what season are we going into? Spring?
That's correct.
Yeah. So is it warming up? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
it is. It's finally nice outside to sit on the deck, take daily walks. It's nice.
Yeah, that's nice. Does it get hot?
It gets pretty sweltering in the summer.
Yeah. And then freezing cold in winter, or is it still quite mild?
It's mild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably like Sydney. Like Sydney doesn't get freezing, it doesn't snow, but summer can be pretty hot and humid, unfortunately. But yeah, it's beautiful. Sun's out today, so that's a good start. So we met through your Instagram page. Can you just give me a bit of a synopsis of what that is and why it exists, and the purpose of the Instagram profile?
Sure. So I started an Instagram called Minding My Mother, specifically for all things dementia. My mom was diagnosed with dementia in October 2020, and that was, as you know, kind of at the start of the pandemic. And it was a lot. It was a lot after that. And my mom came to the US. She was living her retirement life in the Dominican Republic. She came back to the US in March of 2021, so about a year ago, to get a bunch of health issues taken care of. And kind of overnight, I saw myself become a caregiver, not realizing that her dementia had progressed in ways that I hadn't noticed over the phone. And I created this private section on my personal Instagram page just to kind of vent about dementia. And 2021 was the hardest year of my life. It was so difficult with everything going on with my mom, and my dog also had dementia.
Oh.
And my mom had surgeries. It was just so difficult. And I was at my ultra lowest point. And I started seeing other people on my private Instagram that were talking about dementia. And I thought, I need to just make the switch. I just need to go all in and start sharing my tips and learning more tips from other people caregiving for loved ones with dementia and other dementia experts. So I created the page early this year in 2022, and it's called Minding My Mother because I guess the definition of to mind, or the verb of minding, is to pay attention to look after, to heed, or feel concern for. And I kind of feel like I want to do all of those things with my mom. I want to pay attention to her. She's still my mom.
Yep.
I'm going to listen to her, but also I am looking after her, and I do feel concerned for her and her diagnosis.
Beautiful. I love that you've looked at the meaning of the word, and obviously it's not just it's not just a word that you've picked. There's a reason for it. So, and I, like you said before, I think one of the things when we talk about dementia or caring for someone with dementia is that there's a lot of, one day at a time, the sun's going to come up again tomorrow. You just got to be positive. And some days it's shit. And I think it's really important that you've got a place to express that and to say it, and to not feel like you need people to go, it's okay, tomorrow's another day, it's going to be fine tomorrow. It might not be fine tomorrow might be horrible too. And I think that it's really important that we have a safe place that we can express that and feel heard without being judged and trying to be made to feel better.
Absolutely. The dementia Instagram, and from what I understand, the TikTok community is incredible. I'm not on TikTok, but these are my people, and these are my only people. Other than my husband, my Instagram friends on my dementia account are everything. Like, I get through the day with them, and I like to think that they get through the day with all of us.
Yeah.
There is no in-person community of a bunch of dementia caregivers.
Yeah. Isn't it incredible that, I think that's one of the biggest things that's come out of the pandemic and being disconnected is the blessing is that it's forced people to find other ways to connect. The fact that we can do interviews via Zoom, I can run classes via Zoom. And I did a class last week where some of the participants couldn't come because they usually walk and it was raining. So we just jumped on Zoom and I did partly live and partly Zoom, and they were still able to connect with each other. That would never have happened if we hadn't had the last 2 years. So it's definitely something amazing that's come from it. So thank you for today. I think this is a really important topic that we're going to discuss. And the topic is why I am not parenting my parent. And we've got some different points to go through. I'll just break down the 4 main areas that we're going to discuss, which is firstly the definition of parent, what the word means, what that entails, the sacredness of being a parent, the stigmas around dementia, which I think is a really important thing to cover, and just the awareness of the differences between parenting and caregiving. So we're going to cover those today. So let's start with, actually, before we do that, let's just give a little bit of your background and how you came to this point with your mum, if that's okay.
Sure. So I live in North Carolina with my husband and 2 dogs. I work at a university here in environmental toxicology. And in 2018, my mom retired and moved to the Dominican Republic with her partner. It was always her dream to live on the beach and only wear flip-flops. So she moved from the middle of the US, where she had lived her entire life, to a Spanish-speaking Caribbean island.
Wow.
And so I didn't see her a whole lot at first. And then, especially once the pandemic hit, travel was obviously difficult. But I did start to notice, even before she moved to the Dominican, some strange behaviors and just kind of some turn of phrase that were out of character for her. And then I kind of started to notice some short-term memory loss, like 2018, 2019. And her dad, my grandpa, had Alzheimer's, but he was pretty old. He was in his 80s when he developed it. And my mom was in her mid-60s. And I tried to talk to her about it for over a year, saying, Mom, maybe it might help just to get checked out. I don't really know anything about it or what they could find or what they could do, but your dad did have it. Like,
yeah,
I don't know, let's check it out. And she was opposed to it at first. And then in 2020, she was back in the US because actually her partner's son had passed away. So they had to come back to the US. And she said, yeah, well, maybe, yeah, I do feel like I can't remember words. I keep forgetting words. So I took her into a place that I knew was great for people with neurocognitive disorders. And it came back saying she had at least mild dementia. That's kind of really all.
Yeah.
Further assessment and review is needed. What else did you ask?
Just about the background of your mum, how you came to this point, and how I guess you made the decision that you were going to be her caregiver.
Okay, so
was it a decision?
So about 6 months went by. Since then, she went back to the DR, And she just had a bunch of older age medical issues come up, probably like starting at the time she moved down there, but the pandemic exacerbated it. And also living in a country where there isn't great medical care. She just wasn't able to get seen for arthritic issues and like a weird skin condition she had going on, and kind of just all these random things. And it got to the point where she was just miserable. So she said, I'm going to come up there in March. I've got to see somebody about my hip and this and that. So I started researching doctors for her to see. My husband and I sold and bought a new house that would accommodate for her and her spouse if they needed to be here long term. So she came up in March, right when we bought our new house, and it was just very clear to me that she wasn't managing day to day the way I had remembered her. She was just having a lot of issues with kind of what we call executive functioning skills, executive level tasks, where you have to plan and organize and remember multiple things, making doctor's appointments and remembering that you've already done something or you've already bought something, or remembering to pay your bills. And I'm noticing deficits in all these areas, and went to 2 doctor's appointments with her and quickly realized, wow, she needs help in these areas. So I really just felt like that was what the definition of a caregiver was. I've already been reading every dementia book and scientific article, by the way, since the diagnosis. Like, I pour myself into information whenever I can. It's like my coping mechanism. So I've already totally familiarized myself. I'm like semi-expert on dementia and in my brain. And so I'm like, yeah, okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm caregiving. And then she had 2 major surgeries over the summer, which, doesn't help when you have a neurocognitive brain disorder. General anesthesia can cause temporary and permanent decline. And then just her not being mobile and just kind of having pain and taking pain meds, like all that is bad for somebody who has dementia. Things were getting really tough for me. Like I said before, it got really low for a while. It was just too much. It was really hard. My mom's behavior was becoming very aggressive, agitated, mean. It was very difficult. And we had a plan for her to go back to the DR in September. And then her spouse suddenly died in the Dominican Republic on September 1st, 2021. He died of a heart attack. And whoa, our lives were turned upside down. This means she's not going back to the DR. She doesn't have a place to live. She'd already sold her 65 years worth of stuff when she moved to another country. She's basically homeless, spouseless, recovering from surgeries, and in this early dementia diagnosis. So it got even harder. And through that time, that's when I started my Instagram page to start connecting with more caregivers, knowing that my mom was going to be with me full time and continue to need help.
Yeah. So was that, and if you don't want to answer this question, it's fine. Was there a decision where you had to sit down and speak with your husband and discuss whether this was, like, we can do this or we can do that? Or was there never any choice in your mind that this was the option that you would be taking?
So that's a really good question, because a lot of people have opinions about
a lot of people do have opinions and like to share them
about caring, about caregiving. I've had people tell me this isn't your responsibility. And I'm kind of like, well, whose is it? So am I just gonna, was she's going to wander around the streets? I mean, I just can't even fathom how I don't have a responsibility in it.
Yeah.
So in a way, yes, it was just kind of like, well, duh, this is happening. But also, yeah, I did have a conversation with my husband. I mean, we decided to buy this house knowing that eventually her disease is going to progress to a point where she can't care for herself, and we're going to need a better setup to do that.
Yeah.
Because the healthcare system in the US and caring for retired people is a joke, and it's really expensive for people to live in memory care and assisted living facilities.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the same here. It's crazy. And it's confusing, and it's not simple. I spoke with a friend the other day who's both of her parents have just moved into a facility, and I mean, she was exhausted, she was drained, she was stressed, she was emotional, she was, it's really confronting, and it's all consuming for the period leading up to it. And then obviously there's all the emotions that go with it, the guilt, all of that stuff that happens. But yeah, it's confusing. There's no step-by-step process. It seems like there's lots of different people that can give you advice. Really, you just need someone to say, here's your 10 things you need to do, tick them off.
Right.
But it doesn't seem to happen like that. And there's so many different, there's almost too much help that becomes overwhelming, that it just makes it even more confusing, and it's already stressful enough. So let's get on to what's the definition of the word parent. And I know you love researching in words, so I know that you would have a great definition of parent or parenting.
Yeah. So so as a former biologist, the definition of a parent is an organism that produces or generates. I am not a parent myself. I know that I am not producing. I haven't produced anything, and I'm not generating a beautiful life for anyone. But I do find that there's like a sacredness to being a parent. And although I'm not a parent, I know how to be parented, and I know what it's like to have parents. And I say all this because I see, let me disclaimer for a moment. I just want to say that this opinion here that I'm sharing today is of my own and does not represent all caregivers or even any other caregivers or any experts in the field of dementia. I see a deficit in dementia awareness, and I want to bring attention to it. And it's just an opinion of my own. And I'd also like to say, just for people who don't know, because there does seem to be a pretty big lack in dementia understanding and awareness, that dementia is an umbrella term for multiple neurodegenerative brain diseases, such as Alzheimer's, frontotemporal, Lewy body, mixed dementia, vascular dementia. So every type of dementia is different, has their own symptoms, and then every person who gets that different type of dementia is going to react differently to having that disease. So everybody's journey with dementia and everybody's caregiving journey with dementia is so different. And my journey and my experience has what's shaped my individual opinion and thoughts about how I think about dementia. So getting back to the definition of a parent, I say all that because one thing I hear a lot on other dementia podcasts and on Instagram and even in reading material is that people say, I feel like I'm parenting my parent. Or people say, oh gosh, it sounds like you're caring for a child or a toddler. And I just really take issue with that. I think that there's a role reversal, certainly, that's there when you're caring for your parent who has dementia. But that role reversal is there when you're caring for your aging parent, no matter they have dementia or not. Like, you know, when you're an adult child, you come to a point where you say, Dad, you shouldn't be climbing on the ladder anymore. There's a role reversal, but I don't equate caregiving with parenting. And I think that we're doing a disservice to the neurocognitive health community and the dementia community by using this language. And I think that it's easy to just kind of equate caregiving to parenting. It's an easy comparison because it may be the closest pursuit to caregiving, but there are far more differences than similarities when it comes to parenting and caregiving. And I think that as far as raising awareness for dementia and the diseases that cause dementia, like, we're not getting anywhere by using that language. So the ultimate goal, right, with dementia is to eliminate it. It sucks. It's a terrible, disgusting disease. So we need to find a cure and or treatment. And we need to fully understand the neurodegenerative diseases that cause dementia. So in order to do that, we need more funding worldwide in every country. And to get funding, we need to raise more awareness. And we aren't raising awareness about dementia when we're comparing caring for an adult with dementia to raising a child. Yeah. I think that we need to be highlighting the differences between the two in order to raise awareness. And I think that people kind of default to comparing it because it feels comfortable. And dementia is uncomfortable, right? Like, there's so many unknowns, so many misunderstandings about dementia in the general public. So it's uncomfortable, and people don't like to be uncomfortable. People, when they're fearful, they just want to talk about something that they're familiar with. And everybody's familiar with parenting. Like, everybody has kids, you know, it's completely normal. But I think that we need to get uncomfortable. And I think we need to talk about dementia so it becomes comfortable, so it becomes less stigmatized, so people understand what dementia is, what it isn't, and what we in the dementia community need, because we need a lot. We need a lot of help. And so I just, like, I want to be sensitive to the fact that I know there are a lot of people who use that language. You know, I feel like I'm parenting my parent. And that may be how you feel, like, with your parent and dementia. I don't feel that way at all. Like, with the symptoms that my mom has and her kind of anger and agitation and hostility sometimes, like, I don't feel like I'm being a loving mother. And the thing is, like, I don't want to be my mom. Like, I don't want to be parenting my mom. My mom already had a mom and she was rad. She doesn't need another one. She needs a partner to help her as she tries to navigate the world with a degenerative brain disease. And I'm proud to call myself my mom's daughter. Like, my mom is amazing. She's an amazing woman. I'm proud to be her daughter. I I don't want to be anything but her daughter. I'm not parenting her. I'm partnering with my mom through this journey.
That's really powerful, because I think, like you, well, I totally agree that when we make it normal or comfortable, then we actually don't need to push and to question and you know, it's just part of life. You know, you start this way, right. You start as a child, you become an adult, and then you go back to being a child. And it actually gave me goosebumps when you were just talking about that, because it's something that, you know, I go into a lot of different aged care facilities and, you know, dementia support units, and I hear it all the time, whether it's staff or families visiting. It's just, you know, this is part of life. You know, mum looked after me, now it's my turn to look after her. And yeah, I think what you just said is super powerful, that's actually holding us back from saying this isn't okay. Like, we need to find prevention, cure, ways to manage it. You know, there's, how come in the space of 2 or 3 months of the pandemic, we can have a vaccination that helps to control and eliminate? Because it's a problem. This is just something that we've now accepted, and it's not a problem enough, because it, like you said, it's normal, and it's accepted that that's what's going to happen. Right. And I guess people say it's like parenting, because there are, when you know, if you've got someone living with you that you need to care for, there are certain tasks within your day that might be similar. And I guess we're going to come, you know, we're going to discuss that a little bit later, but that's why people give it that label, is because that makes it easier in their brain to equate to it. And like you said before, everyone's journey is different, everyone's way of dealing with it is different. The other thing that's come up for me while talking is that, and this is something that's popped up in literally every podcast interview that I've done, is, and it doesn't matter what we've been talking about, whether we've been talking about planning funerals, disabilities, living with a child with disabilities, all of it, it's that the fact that we're not prepared for something with enough time until it happens, and then we're dealing with it with emotions, right, rather than being educated, having the knowledge that we need when we're calm and unemotional and logical. And, you know, when our emotions are high, our intelligence is generally low, and vice versa. So you get to the situation that you found yourself in, and then, like you said, you hit a really low point because your emotions take over. It feels like your world's crashing in around you. So the logical part of your brain doesn't function as well, and the emotions kick in and take over, and then we're in fight or flight mode, and it's just, you know, just got to get through, instead of, you know, being able to think things through logically and clearly. Because if you knew 20 years ago that this was going to happen, there would have been certain things that you would have had to put in place and plan for and educate yourself, rather than squeezing it into a short period of time and becoming overwhelmed and emotional.
Right. And honestly, my mom has a rarer form of dementia that affects people at younger ages. It can affect people as young as 30. Wow. And in hindsight, it's likely that she's had this disease for about 10 years. And so even just looking back 10 years, right, like in my mom planning for her future and putting things in place and getting me educated and me getting educated, like we wouldn't have even been able, I mean, it would have been difficult to do, because she's been progressively living with this disease for years now. But you said something that made me think how important it is with people living with disabilities, people caring for adult children living with disabilities, and people who have neurocognitive disorders. I just think we need to be more, I think we need to be more inclusive and considerate with the language we use. And we just in general need to normalize all of this. It's so normalized in every work environment I've ever been in for parents to be able to just take off early because there's parent teacher conferences.
Yeah.
Or their child has a fever and has to be picked up from school. But, it's very, I even feel uncomfortable in my workplace full of kind of open-minded scientists saying, I can't, I got to just take 4 hours off right now, all of a sudden, because there's a crisis in my mom's world and I need to help her. And just like normalizing that there are so many, there are millions of us living out there with these non-average lives with, husband, wife, or 2 parents and 3 kids. I mean, people caring for people in different scenarios. I just hope that we can eventually be more considerate of how we talk about it and talk about it in general and not be uncomfortable talking about it.
Yeah.
And you brought up a comparison between parenting and caregiving. And I don't remember what it was now, but it was really good when you said it.
Hold on. Was it about the tasks that are involved?
Yes,
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I do have a whole bunch of opinions on differences yet similarities.
Yeah.
If you want to get into that.
Yeah, let's do it, because one of the things on the I guess the what we're going to discuss is the people being aware of the differences and the similarities. So that's, I think that's really important. And like I said, I guess that's why some people think it is parenting, because, whether it's helping support feed someone or decide what clothes to wear for the day. Hit us with some differences and similarities. And I guess why the similarities are similar, but they're actually different.
Oh, well, I don't know if I can go that deep, but
yeah, we can.
I will say, again, this is really, I just want people to understand this is like really coming from my my awareness heart and my activist self, and also that caring for, being care partner to or caregiver to someone living with dementia is incredibly difficult. And it becomes 24/7. It becomes a 24/7, 365 job. And millions of, at least Americans, are doing this completely unpaid or completely putting their lives on hold to do this. So I forgot the point I was making. Cut this out.
That you're coming from your own place of awareness, and that everyone's journey is different, I guess, is where you were heading.
Right. So the thing, so as it's already so difficult to do this, and just the physical and the mental toll it takes on you, but also just watching someone you love literally lose their mind is incredibly hard. And then when I have to take the time to explain to somebody what the disease is, it honestly pisses me off. And I'm not mad at the person. I'm just mad at the system. I'm just mad at society. Again, we need to normalize this. We need people to understand what dementia is. I shouldn't have to explain this to you. It's not stigmatized. You didn't do anything wrong. It's not like you smoked 5 packs of cigarettes a day for 5 decades and you did that wrong. Now you have lung cancer. I mean, people don't do things wrong to get dementia. It's just unfortunately something that happens to some people. And I don't like having to explain to people what it is and why it's happening. And I just wish people knew. So, I guess the thing to start is with parenting. I feel like parenting is very integrating. Like, you have kids and you are immediately integrated into so many groups and communities, right? Like, okay, now if you're in a church, you get your child baptized or whatever your religious affiliation is. You're integrated into that community. You're integrated into the preschool community. You're integrated into the children's sports community. Like, you might move into a neighborhood that's more family friendly, right? Like, you're immediately integrated in with the majority of the people in the entire world who have kids. Whereas with being a dementia caregiver, it's isolating. It's the opposite of integrating. There is no community, just there at reach, like there is for parenting. I can't just, have my neighbor pick up my mom from her senior center on her way home from, her mom isn't at the senior center, like all your kids going to the same school. There's, I don't want to discount or discredit the dementia Instagram community and the amazing support groups that are out there and the resources and the books that are there. But like, realistically, come on. I mean, look at the community that you have as a parent, your church community, your school community, your family, your siblings, and they have kids. Like, there's always people at reach that you can integrate with and feel comfortable with and find your people. And let's just say you have an emergency if you're a parent, like, whatever, your spouse is in an accident, or you have a ruptured kidney or something, just like some random emergency. At any given moment, you could ask pretty much anyone to watch your children.
Yeah.
Like, it wouldn't be your first choice, but you could ask the neighbor.
Yeah.
Or the other neighbor, because they probably had kids, or they had grandkids, or they have kids, or they have a niece and nephew. Like, you could ask pretty much anybody if you needed to in an emergency to watch your children, and they would be fine for 6 hours. It's like near impossible to find someone to care for and sit with your loved one with dementia, even if you're trying to plan it 3 months in advance. Like, there are not enough people who are trained in dementia care and who are trained in the specific different types of dementia, who you could leave your loved one with. I mean, your loved one with dementia could be having hallucinations, delusions, not know how to toilet, and your average person is not capable of managing that level of care with an adult that's, could be larger than you. So I just, when I think about like the care that you can have if you're a parent and the care that you don't have when you're a caregiver, to me, it's just so clear. Isolating versus integrating. And I saw this news clip on like Vox or something. I don't know what it was. It was a group, it was probably 6 months ago. It was a group of stay-at-home moms that all got together in a parking lot and they just screamed. And it was like, look at these moms getting together, releasing their, mom energy, getting it out. And my first thought was, okay, where are my caregivers at? Which parking lot are we going to? But then I thought about it and I was like, I don't know any caregiver that could just meet up on a Tuesday night in a parking lot and scream. Like the amount of work you have to do to leave your house for any amount of time, especially when your loved one with dementia is in moderate to severe stages, like that's not happening. we're most likely not meeting up in a parking lot to scream, even if it's planned for 2 months.
Yeah.
Because something is going to come up. And then the other thing I thought about is, I get it. Like, I don't have kids. I'm not a parent, but I'm an empathetic human being and I understand the world. And I can understand that this pandemic has been difficult on parents and having children go to school from home. Like, I get that. And being a stay-at-home mom is or stay-at-home dad is an incredibly admirable thing to do. I'm not knocking that whatsoever. But I thought, okay, all of those moms are going to go home after they scream and let it out and feel better and get some camaraderie. They're going to go home and they're going to see their sweet kids' little faces and they're going to tuck them in and they're going to kiss them goodnight and they're going to say, I love you, mommy. Or they're going to make them an art project at school the next day, or you're going to get some sort of affirmation from your child that makes it all worth it, right? So caregivers, if they come home from a parking lot after screaming, there are many caregivers that are going to come home to their loved one not even knowing who they are, not even being able to recognize their face, or just being agitated for a reason that they can't communicate, or having toileted themselves on the couch. And that's nothing like parenting. That's hard. And I think, I guess, which we discussed a little bit earlier, like, there's this huge stigma around having dementia. I mean, my mom sort of understands that she has an issue with her brain, but she doesn't want to talk about it. And she doesn't want to tell anybody about it because she's a boomer. She's of the generation where you didn't talk about those kinds of things or talk about mental health. And, it's definitely not stigmatized to have a kid and to be a parent. But like I said, I do feel like it's slightly stigmatized in my workplace. Like, I just don't feel, it doesn't feel equal to me to be a caregiver versus a parent.
No. And I think I've got experience with people with brain injuries. It's a hidden condition, illness. If someone loses their leg, it's obvious. If you were caring for someone who suddenly ended up in a wheelchair, generally the people around you, people are going to drop you dinners, people are going to, give you a massage voucher, people are going to go, oh, well, what can we do to help Rachel? Suddenly she's in a position where she's got someone in a wheelchair. It's visual and it's obvious and people want to help. But because they can't see it and they don't understand it, which comes from, as you were saying before, the awareness and the exposure to it, because we hide it. If we've got it, it's kind of similar to the journey of, having a child with a disability. It's, 50 years ago, no one saw people with disabilities because, there was homes or special centers where they were sent because people didn't know how to deal with it. So, over time, kids are more used to seeing people with disabilities or experience people with disabilities at school. But yeah, if your mum was suddenly in a wheelchair or, your husband or whatever, people would rally around to help you because, what a horrible situation you're in. But because it's
cancer.
Yeah, exactly. But when it's a brain injury or a brain condition or a neurological disorder or whatever, people don't get it because they don't see it. They don't see the consequences. They might see you at the shops with your mum and she's agitated, she's having a meltdown, she's overwhelmed, it's noisy, the lights are too much, the sound's too much, something's not where she thought it was going to be. They don't understand and they literally turn their backs rather than want to educate themselves because it's uncomfortable, right? Like we were saying before. And then for your mum or the person that you're caring for, if someone loses their leg, it's okay, my brain's going to tell me now that I need to go and get help from physiotherapists, from doctors, from I'm going to join a club for other people with disabilities. But because it's your brain, the very thing that is telling you that you can go and get help and you can go and get support and there's things you can do is the very thing that's preventing you from doing those things.
Right. So, and you mentioned whether it's your mom or someone else you're caring for. And that's a really good point, because the other caregiver in the room is a caregiver to their spouse.
Yeah.
And they're a different group of people. I mean, in my support groups, I go to a variety of support groups. I go to one specifically for frontotemporal dementia, which is what my mom has. I have one that's specifically for daughters, and then I have one for care partners. And I never hear the spouses caring for their loved ones with dementia saying they feel like they're parenting their wife of 40 years.
Yeah, wow.
And so like to say that I'm parenting my parent is almost, to me, kind of feels like we're leaving out the spouses that are caring for their loved ones with dementia. I mean, yeah, there's similarities, right? Like we've already discussed how there are similarities, but that's their life partner, that's their lover, that's their spouse. I mean, yeah. I would care for my spouse in any way I needed to, and I would never feel like I'm parenting him. And the other thing is, there's this whole other group of people called the sandwich generation, where they're caring for their children, school-age children, and they're also caring for their parents with dementia.
Yeah.
And I don't know for sure, but I gather from some of my friends from support groups and Instagram that they separate those two duties. You know, one, they carry different weight, they carry different meanings, and there's different needs. So I guess what I'm saying is, to me, there is no comparison. Caregiving isn't like parenting. It's just a different thing, period. And we just need to learn that, and we need to understand that. And we're not going to do that if we don't keep talking about what it is, what it isn't. And the thing is it's not always bad, right? Like I said earlier, every type of dementia is different. Every person is different. Some people are very sweet and docile and giggly. Some people are very verbal. Some people are nonverbal. Some people are aggressive. Some people get inappropriate and make it difficult to be in public spaces. It's not always bad, but there is this idea in caregiving or working with people who have dementia called entering their reality. And this is something that you do, when your loved one with dementia is having a delusion or a hallucination, or they're lost in time. They're seeing a mythical creature that's red living in the walls.
Yeah.
Or they think that they're talking to their next door neighbor from 1963. They think you're that neighbor. And instead of telling them there is no mythical red creature living in the wall, and I'm Rachel, your daughter, and it's 2022, you just enter their reality to avoid agitation, to avoid confusion, frustration, because honestly, if you do that, it's terrible for you and the person. Then you just both end up upset.
Yeah.
So I have no problem entering this reality. And I know that a lot of really loving care partners also don't have a problem entering that reality. But the thing is, as we do that, as the disease progresses, as these strange scenarios progress and continue, what we're essentially doing is going to live in that dementia world quite frequently.
Yeah.
And we're actually losing, in a way, our own reality, our own identity, our job, our friends, our social life. Whereas when you're parenting, you're molding and shaping and growing this beautiful little child, and you're evolving as a family, and you're watching your child become more independent, and you're growing as a person and as a parent. And it's kind of like a flower blooming versus a flower dying, like it's getting better for your child. They're learning more, and they're taking it in, and they're seeing the world, and they're understanding math. And my loved one with dementia is, forgetting how to do the hobby they used to love, and they're forgetting who people are, and they're losing their minds.
Yeah. It just made me think, like, I've got two girls, two teenagers, which has its challenges. We've been teenage girls, so we know. But something that I've said to my friends and people that I've worked with is that as a parent, my job is to equip and set my child up for the world and for life, and to give them the skills that they need to, as you said before, blossom and to go out into the world. And I know that I've done a good job. If they can be independent, and they can function by themselves, and they can have conversations with people, they can get on public transport, they can cook a meal, they can hang a load of washing on the line, all of those things. So I'm setting them up, I'm giving them the skills to go out into the world. But it just kind of occurred to me then that as a caregiver, you're actually doing completely the opposite. You're basically so I'm developing my child to go out into the world. Mm-hmm. You're actually you're having to adjust your world to the person that you're caring for, which is, like, as you said, completely the opposite.
Yeah. And like I said, it's not all bad. Their life is not over at a dementia diagnosis.
No.
There's still many years there where you can still make memories and do beautiful things. But as you said, I'm not caring for this person to hopefully make them more independent. Like, they're actually losing their independence. And that's so sad. Yeah. It's horrible. It's just, to see that happening to someone you love is just, there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
And I feel like I hear parents and caregivers say a similar thing, which is, I wish time would stop. And I feel like parents are saying that kind of from, like, knowing all the things you just said, knowing that they're watching their children grow and watching them become more independent and watching them learn new things. And that's really exciting.
Yeah.
But they're saying that because they want to hold on to this moment, and they don't want to let their baby go, but they also do want to see them grow and become a beautiful person. Whereas caregivers will say, I wish I could just stop time, because I just can't bear to watch my loved one decline anymore, because I don't want to see the next stage.
Yeah.
I don't want this to be any more devastating than it is now. I don't want them to lose their ability to toilet, to feed themselves, to do things that they used to know that bring them joy. We don't want them to forget who we are. And for those who really don't know much about dementia, I mean, there are still moments of joy in dementia. There's plenty of activities you can do with your loved one with dementia. You can have good moments every day if you want to. If you want to make that happen, you can do that. And I do have good moments every day with my mom, multiple times a day. Yeah. And I love hanging out with her. But I'm not doing these activities with her to shape her into growing and generating a new life. I'm doing these activities to help her get through the day.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Just very quickly, there might be people that are going to listen to this that have no experience with dementia and how it presents in different ways. So when you referenced before, seeing a red mythical creature in the wall, for some people listening, they'll be like, whoa, like, does that happen? And I know with my nan, she had experiences like that. And my mum was amazing. My nan lived in an aged care facility, but my mum and her brothers and all the extended family were amazing and educated themselves onto, the best way to help her through those moments. And she'd have awful hallucinations. She was delusional towards the end of her life, and it's confronting and it's scary. And my mum and her brothers would leave, traumatized from seeing someone that they love go through these things. But they had done a lot of research and read a lot, and, like yourself, of what to do when you're in that moment. And you said about entering her reality. Can you explain what that means for people that don't know? So let's use the example of the red mythical creature in the wall. How do you enter her reality? What are the things that you would be saying in that situation?
I'm glad you asked that, because I'm realizing that I never finished saying that. So I'd like to point out first that delusions and hallucinations are not definitely a thing that's going to happen with everybody who has a dementia. They're definitely more common in certain types of dementias. My mom does not have them, hallucinations or delusions. My mom does do this other thing, which is called confabulating, but she's not seeing things that aren't there. So if someone is, when you enter their reality, you would say, oh my gosh, are the red things scary? And if they say yes, you would say, gosh, that sounds really terrible. Do you want to go to a different room? Or do you want to look at the birds out the window? And you kind of distract or deflect from the issue. And then if they say, no, it's not scary, you can say, oh, well, tell me about them. What do they look like? I can't see them. It's so cool that you can see them, but I can't see them. And then you just have, a 30-minute conversation that came up because your person had a hallucination. So I'm there. I'm in that reality. I'm definitely not in my reality. I'm not thinking about my work. I'm not using functions and skills of my brain. Like I was not prepared for life in this to do this. Or if someone is remembering someone who isn't there and they think it's 1964, you just, a lot of times people will see dead people, or they think people who've been dead for 20 years are actually alive. And you don't say, Mom, those people died 20 years ago, because then they grieve every single time you tell them that. Instead, you would say something like, you know what? I already called them. I left a message. They're probably going to call back tonight. And then, unfortunately, they forget that you said that.
I had an experience with a class where I went in one day to teach my regular class, and I generally get there early and I stay late because I like to chat. And one of the gentlemen was in his wheelchair, and he was asking for his wife. And when's she coming to see me? When's she coming? I haven't seen her. She's meant to be here. Righty. They're telling me that she's not here, and I think she's here, and the poor staff, they're understaffed. We're coming out of a pandemic. People are close contact, so they can't go to work. So the staff are torn into a million places, and I could see that this particular member of staff had clearly done everything she could in her power to help him, while still making sure that the other 15 residents were looked after. So I said to the staff member, I said, would it help if I took him to his room to look for his wife? And she said, oh, if you don't mind, that would be amazing. So I said, come on, Bob, what would you like me to do? And he said, can we go and look in my room? And I said, yeah, of course we can. So I said, I'm just going to move your wheelchair. I'm going to take the brakes off. Can you take me to your room? So he took me to the room. We went in, we had a look around, and I said, can you see your wife? Like, is she in here? And he said, no, I can't see her. And I said, okay, well, what would you like me to do now? And he said, well, can you just check in the wardrobe? And I said, yeah, of course I can. So I said, are you happy for me to open your wardrobe? And he said, yes. So I opened the wardrobe and I said, I don't think she's in here. And he said, no, she's not in there. Shut the wardrobe. And I said, so we've checked your room. Is there anywhere else that you think she might be in here? And he said, well, I'm not sure. What do you think? And I said, well, would you like me to check under the bed? And he said, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. So I got down on my hands and knees and I'm checking under the bed. And I said, I'm pretty sure she's not under here, Bob. And he's like, oh, okay, well, maybe she'll be in later. And I said, you know what? I think she will. So I said, right. What would you like to do now? And he said, oh, can we go back? So I wheeled him back to the lounge room, put his brakes back on. We did the class. He didn't mention his wife once more. The other residents were calmer because he wasn't yelling out every 2 minutes, I want my wife, where's my wife? And, it probably took me 4 minutes of me like you said, entering his reality and just, giving comfort in a way that's helpful to him. And that's something that's come up is, we as humans, as nice humans, we like to be helpful, but sometimes we assume what the help is. And we actually need to ask the person, would you like help? And once we know, yes, they would like help, what is that help that you actually need? Because what I think is helpful might not be what you want as help.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
yeah, it's that was such a beautiful story. It really just made my heart smile to hear you hanging out with.
Oh, look, I've had the opposite where I've arrived and someone's been agitated and stressed and I've said, Joyce, what's up? And she's like, my daughter's on the train. She's coming here for lunch. And I said, oh, that's nice. She's like, yeah, but she's late. I think something bad's happened. And I said, oh, that's no good. What can I do? And she said, your husband, who she's never met, your husband. I said, yeah. She said, he works on the trains, doesn't he? And I said, he does. And she said, do you think you could call him and see if he's seen her? So I said, yeah, of course. So I literally walked around the corner. I walked back. She said, did you call him? And I said, yes. She said, and I'm like, where's the line between lying and reality?
This is a part of it. Yeah.
Because it goes against human nature to lie to that extent. She said, did you speak to him? And I said, yes. And she said, oh, he's seen my daughter, hasn't he? And I said, I think he has, and she's on her way. She'll be here later. And I know that her daughter is going to visit later. So it was just, and that was it. She was comforted. She felt better. She was definitely less agitated. I must admit that I did have that kind of, am I lying? Have I crossed the line? Am I making stuff up to make her feel better? Because that kind of goes against what we do in day-to-day life when we're not dealing with someone with dementia. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, that's interesting, right? Because there are lies we tell children too, you know, when they're like, mommy, what are you drinking? And, you're like, this is my mom juice. Or sometimes you don't tell kids about that somebody died or how they died, depending on how old they are. Everybody lies to their kids about Santa.
Not a lie.
Sorry, spoiler alert. But it feels different.
Yeah.
I don't know. It feels different when I do that with my mom. I mean, a lot of the lies I have to tell with my mom, she has primary progressive aphasia. So it affects the temporal lobe, which is the language, speaking, executive functioning part, but she also has a lot of behavioral issues. So one, I'm like, it's weird to lie to my mom.
Yeah.
That's we all probably did it in high school. But you're not supposed to lie to your parents, right? And it's kind of normal to lie to kids, right? We just can't tell them everything because they can't understand it yet, or they're going to be upset. And while that is similar with dementia. Like they're going to be upset, or we can't tell them everything. It feels different to be standing there talking to a full grown adult human, when they're believing that someone who's been dead for 20 years is alive, and just lying to them. It's a very weird, unnatural circumstance to be in. It's interesting how there is a similarity there.
Yeah.
And I will say that there's, I guess, I do have another similarity. And it has to do with boundaries. So I think that, okay, I have to back up a bit. I feel like when you become a parent, you know, that becomes your life, right? Like, especially when you have babies and toddlers, like, this is my life. And a lot of times when my friends that I've had for many years become parents, the conversation seems to shift to a lot more about their children. And that's fine. That's normal. But that's a similarity for me too.
Yeah.
Like that is a similarity between parenting and caregiving. So dementia care is my life. On the rare occasion that I am able to catch up with a friend in person at a lunch or a dinner, or on the phone, like they're like, what's going on in your life? I'm like, dementia. I mean, it's just my mom isn't even living with me right now. Like she did move into a facility that she's going to be living in for a short amount of time. But like, it's my life. It's all consuming. I'm trying to like be the part of my mom's brain that isn't working. Like I'm trying to share my brain with her. I'm trying to help her remember things and do things. And so that's what I have to talk about. And that's what parents do, right? They're like, I want to tell you about my baby. It's so cute and sweet and it's fun and it's relatable, right? Like you can talk about your babies and your kids with so many people, but you can't do that as a care partner to somebody with dementia. Like, again, it's uncomfortable. Nobody understands it. And it's depressing. Like nobody wants to talk about it, which I think therein lies an underlying problem we have with toxic positivity, which is a whole nother podcast. But I feel like, you know, if I'm on the phone with somebody or having dinner and I just had a rough week or a rough day, like I don't feel like I'm allowed to say as much as I want to say. I just feel like they're going to be like depressed and they're not going to want to hang out with me. And it's like, it's not really a fault of them for not giving me the space. It's just, like I said earlier, it's a fault of society of like not knowing how to understand or deal with this. You know, whereas if a parent had a rough day as a parent, they can probably find a parent that just had a rough day as a parent too, you know, and they can like bitch about their kids together and, you know, and then they can go home and love on their kids again. And I feel like on the matter of interacting with people as a parent or a caregiver, there are boundaries. There are just unwritten boundaries, and there are boundaries that you have to draw. And I feel like sharing my life with dementia, my journey with dementia, has alienated me from friends and family members that I've been close with for a long time. And it's maybe because it's depressing to talk to me, or maybe it's because I've drawn boundaries, but I've found that this is proven over and over that as when people criticize my decisions that I make for my mom living with dementia, or they want to give me their unkind, unprompted opinions when they have no idea what it's like to walk a day in my shoes, You know, I have to draw a boundary. Like, I can't hear that. That's harmful to my mental health, and I need to stay focused on my mom. And, you know, the relationship that I am still lucky to have with my husband. But you would, and I find that as I draw the boundaries, it only isolates me even more. Because people are like butthurt and offended and mad at me that I said I didn't want their opinion. Or that I say, okay, great, thanks for your opinion. What I actually need is this. And then they get pissed off at me. But it's crazy to me because there's this unwritten boundary rule. Like, you would never say to another parent, or as a childless person, you would never say, I don't think you're doing what's best for your child. I mean, can you imagine if somebody said that to you? Like, I'm thinking of my besties that have beautiful children. And if somebody said that to them, like, I'm just like watching them bust ass. Like, I'm just watching them beat someone up for saying that. Like, you know, they're understandably, the parent is like, you have no idea what's going on in my house. You don't know what my child's needs are. There's no way you're qualified to say what's best for my child when I am the only possible person who could know what's best for them. But for some reason, that is perfectly acceptable to say to a care partner or a caregiver. And I will tell you, Emma, it is said so frequently.
People telling you what you should be doing.
Right. I mean, probably every caregiver friend I have on Instagram has a friend or family member who has said to them, like, I don't think you should do that, or why are you doing that, or doesn't make sense, you know, your mom is fine, or why would you say that about your mom? She did this and was perfectly fine on Tuesday. And that, you know, they just constantly doubt you and your own lived experiences. You would never do that to a parent. I mean, of course, there are some assholes who, you know, cross the line. And will say that, but for the most part, like, it's an unwritten rule. You don't parent somebody else's child. And you don't parent the parent of somebody else's child. And it is just so incredibly hurtful and harmful to a caregiver when they are, especially like millennial caregivers, you know, we're in our prime, or Gen X. I mean, like, we're getting our education or starting in our careers or making a career move or just having children or raising young children. And like, we're caring for our parents in our 60s and 70s, you know, when there's people in their 60s and 70s caring for their 90-year-old parents. And for someone who spends like the amount of time that I've spent with my mom, like 35 years of my life, I've known my mom and interacted with her in all ways. Like, I know my mom, and I know my mom now, and you don't know my mom. Like, no one knows my mom like I do. I am an only child, and I'm the only one who could know how she's coping with life these days, because I see her the most. And it's the same with you being a parent to your girls. No one knows your girls better than you do. And when caregivers are giving up what they are to be caregivers and spending the amount of time and energy that they are, and also simultaneously watching their loved one decline before their eyes, to have someone say, you're not doing what's best for your mom, is the worst possible thing you could say to a caregiver. Why do people think that's okay? I know that's like a really heavy way to end.
I think it's great. I think it's really important. And it actually got me just thinking about, there's like you know how you get those chain Facebook posts where it's like, you know, it might be about, there's one about dementia, you know, dementia is this, that, and the other. If you really care, share this on your timeline. And I love how you're like half smiling because to me, look, those people have got great intentions, right? They probably haven't experienced an experience that like you're going through, or the other caregivers of people with dementia are going through, and their intentions are genuine. I don't think they're sharing it to be nasty. It's for the right reason,
right?
But to me, it would make more sense for them to go to a page like yours, or a support group, or to Dementia Australia's Facebook or whatever, and share articles about what dementia is, what different kinds of dementia there are, what some strategies of dealing with it. That's how we're going to change people's awareness and people's understanding, not by saying dementia sucks. If you care, share this with 5. Right. Do you agree?
Absolutely. And I don't think that, yeah, you're right. People are best intentioned. Yeah. Like they think they're helping. But the thing is, like, you can't help until you're educated. So please educate yourself first.
Yeah.
And I might not agree with the way somebody else is caring for their parent. Or I might think it's bogus what one of my friends is doing with their children. I'm not going to just judge them and make a harsh statement. If I do genuinely love them and care, what I'm going to say is, that's interesting that you made that decision. Would you mind sharing a little bit more about why you've done it that way?
Yeah.
Because that shows that I truly am interested and do care. And I'm opening a dialogue. I'm creating a space for this person to talk, which is not what people are doing when people are best intentioned, as you said, and just try to tell us how to do our job better.
Yeah.
But yeah, therein lies awareness.
Yeah. Amazing. I feel like we've covered so much, and it's been like, I've had so many goosebumpy moments. So thank you. And thank you. Obviously, thank you for your time, because I really appreciate it. And I know how busy you are, and how much we've just covered how busy you are and everything you've got on. And, this is your life, and it's not something that you just talk about from time to time, or you just, dip your toes into the water occasionally. Like this is part of who you are in your life. So I really appreciate your time and talking about it. I highly recommend that, people follow you. So Instagram, Minding My Mother. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to say? Is there a question I haven't asked that I should have asked? I always ask this at the end.
I think you asked all the right questions, and thank you for having me, and thank you for your time. And thanks for allowing me the space to talk about this. I don't know how I sounded or came off, but my entire life I've been told I come off quite boldly and intensely. So I guess I just want to say to your listeners, to caregivers and non-caregivers, that it's just, it's not, I don't know if it sounded that terrible, like having dementia or living with dementia, but I guess, I just want to make clear that life is not over with a dementia diagnosis. My mom is still independent in many ways. And there's still a lot of joy that can happen. It doesn't have to be stigmatized. It doesn't have to be something you're scared of. There's a lot of really great resources out there. The 36-hour day is like a great book for starters, for anybody who wants to learn about dementia. I would plug the AFTD website, the Association for Frontotemporal Dementia. they're a company out of the US that's bringing awareness to frontotemporal dementia, which is the rarer type that can strike at young ages. And I guess I would just encourage people to, you know, like I said earlier, be more considerate about the language we're using, and about the people who are caring for people who aren't, you know, the norm of school-aged children.
Yeah. Beautiful. I just love how passionate you are, and obviously, you know, it's people like yourself that, you know, we're going to make sure people are educated because we're going to talk loudly enough so that they don't have a choice. But like we said earlier, it's one of those things that you actually don't know what you need to know in 10, 20, 30 years time. So, you know, if you can educate yourself about as much as possible, you know, it's great to live in the present and to you know, go day to day, but let's think about the chances of someone that you love developing some kind of dementia are fairly high. Just like the chances of you knowing someone that develops cancer are fairly high. You know, there is a high probability that at some point in your life you're going to know someone with a form of dementia. So
mild cognitive impairment at the least.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So educate yourself, because it's going to happen. Right. And why wait till you're in that situation? And as we said before, it's emotional, it's stressful, you're overwhelmed, you're in fight or flight mode. And at that point, you're not wanting to sit down and read a book and educate yourself then. So have that knowledge ready so that you can just, you know, whip it out of your back pocket when you need it, and you know, go, oh, okay. And, you know, that is going to be developing your brain and helping strengthen your brain and your neural pathways in the process if you're learning.
Right.
So, you know.
And there are people there. I've seen this on Instagram. There are people promoting this idea of a dementia friend. And that's just being a member of the community who doesn't know anybody directly with dementia, but just creating dementia-friendly spaces. You know, just like we've created safe spaces for breastfeeding mothers and safe spaces for people with disabilities, you know, restaurants where the staff get some sort of training on dementia.
I love that.
So that I saw an Instagram page in Singapore where the staff is all people with dementia. And so there are people who are taking orders and they don't remember what your order was. And then you just eat what they ordered for you. And it's fabulous, right?
I love that.
Including these people in our community, in our everyday lives. I mean, it's not a normal part of aging, dementia, which is something to point out. But it, like you said, it also is very real. Like, we've got the baby boomer generation coming up in their 60s and 70s. Like, we've got major dementia potential coming on, and just being a dementia friend and being educated about it is helpful.
I love that. That's giving me goosebumps again. There's an aged care facility here in Queensland where it's a dementia village, and it's set up as a village. There's streets, they've got the hairdresser, and they've got the beauty salon, and they've got a music studio and all those kind of things, and the cafe that the residents can just walk to, and that every cottage has a different address, and they've got their mailbox so they can go out in, you know, similar to living in their own homes. Right. And the cafe is open to the public, so the residents can go in and order their coffee, and the local community, you know, the mums and bubs, you know, groups can go and have their coffee there, and everyone's sitting together having their coffee and interacting. Halloween, they do all the cottages up with, you know, for trick or treat, and the local community walk around and do their trick or treat, but everyone's safe. They can go in the shop and they can buy what they want, but it, you know, they're not actually buying it. It's included in their, you know, their costs and fees. So it's happening, beautiful. But it's just needs to happen faster.
Yeah.
Anyway, we could talk for hours.
Yeah.
So once again, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and thank you for what you're doing and you know, educating you know, what you're doing for your mum and the community, because it's people like you that make a difference. So thank you.
Thanks. You too, Emma.
Thank you.